World Book Encyclopedia, but like Xerox in Taiwan. And actually, the interesting thing about it was not just Xerox, it was also printed. So you could see, just like white spaces in sections about China and Taiwan. So in China, for example, everything ended at the end of World War II, and after that there's like blank space because there's no mention of communism or Mao or anything in the 1970s. So you could very well read this, if you only had this as a reference, then you wouldn't know that in fact China was communist. So there was no section on Mao, that was all blanked out. And all the maps of China were corrected. They had these whited out boundaries, and all these handwritten things saying correction, it's not even a mistake or error, correction. They would write on all these like Mongolia or still part of China. So I found it so fascinating. I would talk to my father about it. He would explain to me like, and I would go to school and look up the World Book articles there and compare them. And it was really interesting. I actually recently bought a the 1920 World Book. I compared the two side by side. It's really interesting because if you look at the article in China, where there's a picture of a parade where everybody's waving the communist flag, in the censored version, there's a picture of a building in Taiwan. And then, there are other segments that are replaced by other pictures that are replaced by paintings or something like that. So it's really, it's really very interesting, and it really sort of brought to me the idea of censorship and how blatant it was, and also it also sort of illustrated to me that what my parents were telling me was correct. That they grew up in a like authoritarian environment. So meanwhile, of course, this was interesting to me. It wasn't my first priority in life. Growing up in suburban Boston, I was interested in the arts. I was, like a good Taiwanese girl, I played the violin, and I loved it very much. And also I wrote. I read a lot. I read tons of books, and I was also the beneficiary of my older brother and sister having gone through everything for me and having sort of broken the way for me. So my parents went through all the sort of traditional heartaches with them, with dating, meeting Americans, and not going to medical school and all this kind of stuff. So by the time I was growing up, my parents were well off, and I didn't have to worry about some of these things that my brother and sister had to worry about. I went to college, I went to Harvard, and I majored in what I loved, which was literature. And I didn't have any career plans other than that. I just happened to love literature, and I wanted to study it. So that I did, which caused a lot of puzzlement among the relatives. Some of whom were like, "Why are you studying English? Don't you already know English?" But I studied literature, and during college I started to sing, and I really loved, singing opera. So I ended up going to graduate school in Boise, Indiana University. But somewhere along the way, as I was preparing to go to Indiana to study opera, I was in my parents' house, and my mom was cooking dinner, and I had this sudden image in my mind of a little boy on the floor of his parents' house in Taiwan. And it was so vivid that I went and I typed it out. It was, I could smell the smells there, and I had the sense that this boy was very sad. And I being young and naive and never having really written anything before, I thought, aha, this is what writing fiction is like. And this is really the first moment for me that I really understood that writing fiction, or at least for me, is not just about moving words around and writing nice sentences, but for me, at least, it was about having an image in your mind, a world in your mind, and communicating it to your readers. So being young and naive and not knowing anything about writing or anything, I started to write a novel. And being also young and naive, 20 years old, and thinking myself quite rebellious for going to opera school and trying to sort of define myself apart from the stereotype of the beautiful Taiwanese daughter, whatever. I really decided this was not going to be about my parents. I said to myself, this is going to be the great American novel. It's going to be like, Tolstoy, Dickens, like all those guys. And I do not want to write a book idolizing my parents. So I tried to write my own book, and I took that boy and I stuck him in suburban America, and I tried to write my own book. But still, this was 1989, and this is before Taiwan had won freedom of speech. So there was still little information here about Taiwan that I could find anywhere, certainly not at the University of Indiana. And I still wanted the kid that I was writing about to have family in Taiwan, and I needed to ask my parents for history facts and stuff, so I called them and I asked them some questions about their childhood and about the history of Taiwan and stuff, and to my dismay, what they were telling me about their lives was far more interesting than what I was writing. and this was a problem for me as an artist. So actually, it kind of put a damper on my aspirations for a while. In addition to a lot of other things, including that I didn't want to, I realized I didn't actually want to be an opera singer. At this time also, I was kind of realizing, so all at once, I was realizing I didn't want to be an opera singer. I kind of want to do something that's a little bit more like in the thick of life, something that's in demand as opposed to opera singing. And also, I also felt like, as a writer, I did take a writing course, a writing workshop there, and my teacher there, my professor there, was encouraging me to get an MFA in creative writing, and I was thinking, I went to school to study literature for undergrad, and that nearly killed my desire to read. And I went to school for opera, and that nearly killed my desire to sing. I got an MFA program that may kill my desire to write, but also I was afraid that I did not have enough life experience to write the kind of book that I wanted to write. Because I grew up in a very sheltered, affluent town, affluent parents, went to Harvard, and I just didn't feel like I had any perspective at all on anything. So sort of a combination of all these things, and I like to think that it was my own decision and not just because I was Taiwanese. I went to medical school. And so I went to medical school. Actually, it was a period of a lot of maturation for me for writing. One of them actually hated medical school, but yeah, I mean, it really did allow me sort of windows in people's lives that you don't get everywhere or anywhere. So in the course of things, of course, I didn't write that much in medical school. I did a little bit. to find out what they've experienced and maybe even write about them if it's interesting. So this was in 2002, and I sat down with a tape recorder and I interviewed them extensively. And so that was the first time I sat down with my father, and I found out that actually he'd been abused as a child and he had this horrible childhood. And that really ended my mother, who had believed in him and gotten him to believe in himself, and gotten him to believe that he could surpass the expectations of his parents and his own expectations, and succeed beyond what anybody thought that he could. So I thought that was a great story, actually, and so I interviewed them extensively, and actually my first draft of my book was very closely following their story. That was around 2005. Got an agent. I was very excited. I thought that would be it. But it didn't sell to publishers at that time. And so I had to think about things. And my agent at the time was saying, "Oh, she make this into a memoir." But again, I felt like, I'm not that interesting. I don't want to write a memoir about nothing. And then my parents, they remember some things, but they don't remember things in the kind of detail that would really make it like a sensory experience or anything. It would be like if I just wanted to write a book that was strictly factual, it would be like really, really short and probably really, really boring too. So I enjoy fiction. I enjoy the immersive nature of fiction and the way that it can make you feel empathy as you're reading along with the main characters. And so I felt actually that what I needed to do to write the book that I wanted to do, that I wanted to write the kind of book that I would love, that I would want to read, like a page-turning, immersive, emotionally vivid book. I needed to make it more fictional. I think at some point I decided, is this going to be like a fun chronicle of my family, for my family, or is this going to be a story that will appeal to the general reader? And so I decided to write the story, with the intent to appeal to the general reader. So with my aim to make it the best story that I can make it, the best novel I can make it, and I have to kind of let go of some of the more personal, factual things that were just there because they happened. And also along the way, this was in the 2000s. So by this time, Taiwan had free speech and free press, and there was a ton of information now available on the internet, and also there's tons of articles on archived articles and things that I could find. So I found out a lot more about Taiwanese history, about 228, about the white terror and all that, and I felt that I wanted to elucidate that part of history as well. And so I tried to combine the two stories in such a way that they paralleled and paid off each other. So my aim was to write a story that would draw people in, but then also that would educate people along the way that Taiwan felt and be like it. So that's what happened, and it was sold in 2010, and publishing was glacial, so that's why it took so long for it to come out. gardening instruments, gardening tools, and no real tools. This one man, he said they kept taking away his knife when he was making the violin gun. So he went out and he got this crock pot that washed up on the beach, and they had the inside glass had broken, and he used the shards of glass to cut the wood after that, and he made this violin, and it's played with the violin, and I played it, and it's amazing. So yeah, so that's sort of what I've been working on since then, and so in short, that's what I'm doing. I mean, I think my role, I feel like one of the things that my parents did, so they told stories, and my mother would sometimes sing this song, Rainy Night Flower. Do you guys know that song? You guys know that, right? Yeah, it's all about, like, my mother would sing this, and she would say, this song, only Taiwanese know what this means. And I would think, yes, that's true, because the lyrics of the song are like, rainy night flower, this flower is dying, and nobody sees it. And kept falling on the night, and it's like that. And I was like, how does this have to do with Taiwan? But now I think after learning more about Taiwanese history, I think I understand what it means to Taiwanese, and what it means, and the importance of it is not necessarily that the flower is dying, but that it's dying unseen. Nobody knows about it. And so I feel like my mission is to shed a little light on that flower and let people know a little bit more about Taiwan.
A lot of songs that describe the experience of Taiwanese young people, after they feel about their future
Yeah.
and their fate. And
Yeah.
things like there are a lot of songs like that.
Yeah. Yeah, they're very sad songs. Very sad songs. Yeah, I incorporated, I put Rain Man Flower in my book, and I tried to use some other Taiwanese folk songs. I had to try very hard to find one that ended happily. So, yeah, well, actually, that's a good first comment. That's my piece. So, anyone else have any questions?
Did your parents read your book, or your other family members?
Yes. My parents have read the book in all its different incarnations, and it's been very interesting to them, I think, because at first it was, like I said, very close to their story, and then as it deviated more and more, they were like, whoa, this is weird. But it's kind of them, and they still feel like it's them, but the people that are them are not doing what they did. So my father, for example, I mean, he's still, I'd say like the emotional journey of the book is still my father. So when my father reads the book, he feels very emotional about it. But yeah, there are certain things that aren't true. So, but yeah, I think overall they've come to realize, especially with the good reception that it's gotten, they understand why I made the changes that I did.
And what if you hadn't become a doctor and just had written the book?
What if I hadn't?
Yeah.
No.
Would you feel proud of you?
I think so. I mean, they sort of stopped saying, when are you going to go back to your career? Your real career.
How long did it take you to write your first draft?
How long did it take me to write my first draft? Let's see. Well, I started the interviews in 2002, and then I started writing, I don't know, somewhere around 2003 when I sold it in 2000. I mean, I didn't sell it. I got my agent in 2005, so a couple of years. But then, I revised it many, many, many times over the years. So, yeah, I mean, I can't even say how many drafts it was because it was just like a continuous process. It continued up until, it came out, basically. I think that's very difficult.
Are you happy with the way it came out?
I am happy with the way it came out. And I think that that's the benefit of having a really long time to work on it. That I will make the next book better. So I think it was good actually that it didn't sell. I think my thoughts at the time were, well, if it didn't, if he sent it to all these editors and the editors didn't love it, then that means that other readers wouldn't love it either. So I need to make it so that everybody loves it. So that's what I tried to do.
How many tries? How many tries?
How many?
Your book was perfected, or your draft was perfected.
Well, let's see. Once I found, I made a million changes, so I was still revising it, and I got my agent in 2010, got the new agent, and she talked to me about revising it more. And the thing is that by this time I realized that the editors and agents, they're the people who give you feedback, but they don't really know how to fix a book, and you have to figure that out yourself. So she was telling me, you need to do this or that, and I thought about it, and I said, you know what, I need to do way more than that. So I made major changes to it after that, and then I sent it to her, and then she sold it pretty quickly after that. She sold it in like a couple weeks, which was great. So to my publisher, which was awesome. So.
Yeah, it's just a great book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Do you know anyone in Taiwan who's read it and giving you feedback, or?
You mean my relatives or just the people in Taiwan?
Yeah, I know it's not translated, but.
Yeah, it's not translated yet. It is going to be. Their rights were bought by a Taiwanese publisher to translate it into Mandarin. I sent it to, I should say that the storyline is fictitious, but I made every effort to make sure that the history was as accurate as possible, because I knew that for a lot of people this would be their one and only exposure to Taiwanese history. So I really wanted it to be accurate. So I did send it to a couple different historians. One of them was in Taiwan, and just to make sure that that it was accurate. I haven't had, there haven't been people who read. I don't know. There are people who read it in Taiwan in English. I don't know yet. But I'm very curious to see what happens when it comes out in Chinese.
I'm interested in some of your inspirations as far as writers, authors, from the past and contemporary. Who do you admire?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think that when I was in college studying literature, I was mostly studying the rule-breaking kinds of literature, and kinds where plot doesn't matter, and it's all about style and form and stuff like this. And then, like I said, it really killed my desire to read. And the first thing I read, it was definitely very educational, and it's helpful for me now to have done all that. But the first thing I read after I graduated from Harvard was Shogun, and I was like, this is the best book I've read for years. And I realized that I love the traditional narrative with, just a traditional page-turning story with history and everything. I enjoy the old-fashioned kinds of storytelling. Like Tolstoy. That was the big one of mine. And more recently, I think I really admired the Kite Runner and how he was able to have a really gripping storyline. Storyline isn't correct in New Hampshire, but a really gripping storyline that also incorporate the history of Afghanistan in there. And so I kind of wanted to have that kind of balance, because there are different balances that people achieve. Lots of people do what I'm doing, or sort of have a personal story with historical background. Or I sort of recently realized that a lot of the other day, a couple months ago, I was reading. I was watching The Hunger Games,
Was there any point in time when you were writing the novel that the events or the emotions got to you that causes you to pause and want to take a break, a short break from writing?
People often ask me that, and I have to admit, no. I don't know why that is, but yeah, I mean, I try to make it very emotional, but I think for me it's a task that I'm trying to, I don't know, sort of translate it. I'm not like personally feeling that. Maybe I won't time. I don't know. Anybody else?
Well, can we some changes that you have to make to your earlier drafts to make it appeal to more people beyond the Taiwanese community?
Oh, what were some of the changes?
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you an idea, because this is the thing. I think there are a lot of things that if they happen to you, it's really interesting. But if you read about it in a book, it's not like if you break your ankle, it's like a real pain and it hurts and it's a pain to get around. But if you read about somebody breaking their ankle, you're like, so what? But I think also, for example, there's a great anecdote that my dad used to tell about how he went fishing with his bare hands in rice paddies, and he was closing in on a fish, and then he realized it was a snake. And then he flung the snake out of the air, and then he escaped. And it was when he tells the story, it's very dramatic. It's like, wow, he was almost bitten by a snake. But when you read the book, so I have that anecdote in the book. When I realized, so what? He was almost bitten by a snake. So then after that, so my changes, for example, in that scene was he got bitten. So he got bitten and it was a poisonous snake. So that completely changes things around, and and that necessitates him going to see a doctor, and that's not the change of events, which otherwise the scene would be completely extraneous.
Julie, do you think people who are not Taiwanese or not Chinese should read your book, and why should they read your book?
Oh, I think people do read it who are not. People just read it because I think if you look at Amazon things, or I've been invited to book clubs where it's just white people. They read just because they've heard a good story, and and then they learn a little bit along the way. And that was really my goal, to appeal to people like that. And it's very interesting actually, because people, especially the older groups who read it, they're like, I thought Chiang Kai-shek was the good guy. I'm thinking he was the good guy and free China and all of that, and they're totally shocked by this. I think people, some people just, that's all they get out of it, is that it's a good story. And some people are like, oh, I had no idea where what Taiwan was, or what the stuff is between Taiwan and China. Maybe they end it still being a little confused, but maybe they've learned a little bit. Some people learn more than others. So.
Just to follow, I did read it, and I passed it on to a number of people, but I taught in a prison for many years, and a lot of my students only wanted to read the literature of their own group and watch films about their own group, and I purposely made everybody read other people's literature.
Right.
I actually think you can get a world more from reading about. You find out what's universalizable, and you find out what's different.
Right.
And if you're not from somewhere else, you don't get that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there are a lot of people who like to read books that are set in a country they know nothing about, because it's a way of sort of painlessly learning about another culture, another country. I think far more people would do that than would pick up a history book and read that. Because everybody wants to be entertained and to read a good story or to watch a good film, but not too many people are going to go out and pick up a non-fiction book about Taiwanese history and do that. Yes.
Do you have anyone pushing you while you were writing your first draft? Like when you want to procrastinate, did someone say, Julie, get back to work?
Not at all. I had a lot of people
hungry, of course Julie's going to be hanging out here with us, so feel free to talk to her. We're also going to have a bunch of food getting fired up, so we're going to use the grill, but we have some pizza, some mifa or bihun ready too. There's snacks around, and we have plenty of drinks, so hopefully you'll stick around and mingle. All right, let's get to it.